Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Logan, and today we're going to be looking at some basic Lenormand card meanings, specifically for cards 7 through 12. We're going to be looking at some keywords that I associate with them, alignments that I associate with them, as well as themes I associate with them, and ways that you can use each card in timing-related questions. As usual, these meanings are ones that I find personally fit well with the cards, so if they don't vibe for you, do not feel pressured to adopt them. Do what feels right for you. Cartomancy is a totally personal art, and so these things are going to be subjective. So I encourage you to follow what works for you. And without further ado, let's jump into it. Our first card is the snake. Its keywords are warning and wisdom, and its alignment is neutral, negative. Now, snake often denotes that the path forward will be a winding one, reminding us that things are not always as they first appear. So like a rattlesnake, it can warn us against stepping somewhere where we have no business stepping, essentially. Snake also denotes a need for wisdom, as a wise person knows how to turn even venom into healing medicine. In a question of timing, the snake can point to something happening in the middle of a long and winding process. As the seventh card in the deck, it can also point to something happening in 7 days, 7 weeks, or 7 months, something happening on the 7th of the month, as well as something happening during the month of July. So that's the snake card. Next, we have the coffin card. Its keywords are endings and transformation, and its alignment is neutral negative, which might be surprising. You might have been thinking, oh, it's a coffin, it's always negative. Not necessarily. So often with the coffin card comes figurative death. What has been will no longer be. And this can apply to thought patterns, friendships, trials. It really comes down to what card coffin appears with. And as such, this card can also symbolize, being in mourning. It can call us to lay things to rest voluntarily, even, such as ambitions, grudges, battles. So see, it's not always negative, and it will very, very rarely point to actual literal death. I think it's also important to remember something I read in Erica Robinson's The Language of Lenormand book is that when we think about death, the matter that makes us up, the energy that makes us and all living things up, that never really dies. It transforms whenever something stops living into something else. So in that way, it can also be a card of transformation. Something's existence in one way is stopping, and it's going to be utterly transformed into something else. So you can also bear that in mind with the coffin card. As far as timing related questions, given that it's a card of things being shut up or boxed in, it can symbolize winter when things are very still. It can also symbolize that something is not meant to happen ever, or that it will happen after a death or an ending. As card number 8, it can also symbolize things happening in August, in 8 days, weeks, or months, or on the 8th of the month. So that is the coffin card, which, little side note, since it generally is a box as well, it can also symbolize feeling boxed in a reading, or even things like claustrophobia. Our next card is the bouquet. Its keywords are gift and beauty, and its alignment is positive. The bouquet often represents gifts, be they in the form of presents or invitations, awards, like getting your flowers at work, figuratively, or opportunities. It can therefore represent small joys as well. Given that, bouquets are generally very aesthetically pleasing, they can also symbolize literal beautification or ornamentation, as well as superficiality, reminding us that things aren't always that deep. When it comes to questions of timing, as you might assume, a card with a bouquet of flowers can symbolize something happening in the spring. As the card of, a bouquet, you get your flowers when you've done a good job, right? It can also represent something happening once you have earned it. As card number 9, it can represent something happening in September, in 9 days, weeks, or months, or on the 9th of the month. So this is the bouquet card. Next, we have the scythe. Its keywords are quickness and harvest, and its alignment is neutral. The scythe card is often a call to alertness, so it can indicate the need for tough decisions made quickly. Scythes, they can be used to reap or to cut away. So this card can have an element of harvesting in it or reaping. Its sharpness can denote a need for handling situations carefully, lest we harm ourselves. And so on that note, it can also warn against literal physical accidents. When it comes to matters of timing, because of that harvest element, the scythe will generally speak towards something happening in the fall or in autumn, whenever harvest time is, or speaking to the whole sudden vibe of it, it can mention or speak to something happening before we are ready for it to happen. As card number 10, it can relate to something happening in 10 days, months, or weeks, on the 10th of the month, or in the month of October. So that's the scythe card. Here we have the whip. Its keywords are conflict and discipline, and its alignment is neutral negative. So the whip, also known in some decks as the rod or the broom, the birch, besom, that sort of thing, often denotes a back and forth. So this can present verbally as an argument or literally as like the act of sweeping or, well, whip can also suggest things like sex. Speaking of, back and forth motions. A lot of people will argue about if sex should be attributed to the whip card or to the lilies card, which we will get to later. And I say that's totally up to you. There's also an interesting sort of middle path you can take with that, where, and I learned this from Erica Robinson's The Language of Lenormand book as well, in which she says that you can attribute more lusty, urgent sex to something like the whip, and something that is more tender to a card like lilies. So I will leave that totally in your court to do with as you will. But yeah, the whip can also represent really needing to knuckle down and work hard at something, as well as to, discipline yourself, to marshal the self-discipline to accomplish your tasks. When it comes to questions of timing, the whip can represent, a thing will happen after a lot of repetition or a lot of back and forth, or that it could happen more than once because of that repetition vibe. It can also symbolize things happening due to the 11 in the month of November, on the 11th of the month, in 11 days, weeks, or month, that sort of thing. So that is the whip card. And then our last card for today is birds. So its keywords are talk and pairs, and its alignment is neutral negative. So this card symbolizes verbal communication, be that regular conversation or like spirited gossip. Due to its alignment, the chatter can often be negative in nature or anxiety fueling. The birds card can also point to things coming in twos, because we do have two birds on the cards generally. Because of that two that we see in the card, it can also hint at things having dual natures. When it comes to questions of timing, however, the birds can represent, as card number 12, things happening in the month of December, in 12 days, months, in a year, things happening annually, or even on the 12th of the month. And due to the chattery aspect, it can also symbolize things happening during a stressful conversation. And if you want to look at it as how birds behave in nature, I would say you could also look at it as something happening in the morning time when birds tend to be chattier. So that has been the birds card. I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you would like to find this exact deck, you can do so in the description below. I will link it there. It's called the Arcana Zhanghu Lenormand. It's lovely. It's very affordable. I totally recommend it. I also have a Lenormand card meaning cheat sheet that I will link below that you can download for free that has some Lenormand meanings that I've put together just to make it a little simpler for anyone who might need or might desire a cheat sheet. It's there for you if you want it. So yeah, in the meantime, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I had a lot of fun going over these cards with you. I hope you are enjoying your Lenormand journey. And until next time, take care of yourself. And of course, bye-bye.